Obviously, one of the things that we tracked through the last couple of weeks for the CoreGap report was the continuing contagion from the so-called 2.0 revolutions coming out of North Africa. I mean, the list of countries that got impacted in the last couple of weeks in just the Persian Gulf alone, fairly substantial. Iran, Iraq, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, Yemen, Jordan, the West Bank, all experiencing some level of unrest, and all of it attributed to the demonstration effect of the successful revolutions in North Africa. You could tell things get serious when the Saudis put $36 billion, sort of a public offering, on the streets, sending money to public sector workers in terms of higher wages, the unemployed, students, the indebted. Of course, Saudi Arabia, one of its problems is that entitlement mentality, and how putting $36 billion out there is going to solve that is a bit of a mystery to us. And yet, it's an effective approach when you're rich enough to keep protesters off the street by saying, yeah, we're responsive and we're concerned about whatever disgruntled feelings you may have towards us. It's also interesting to note, and we like to point out, Tehran trying to position itself as basically the revolutionary leader of this movement, in some ways claiming the original demonstration effect going back to 1979, when in fact it was the anti-government demonstrations in 2009 surrounding the election that could be better described as the actual precursor to these events, the example, the demonstration. Tehran right now looks like an armed camp, so rather ironic there. So when you calculate, is U.S. influence rising or decreasing across the region, you know, the rule of thumb that a lot of people are offering, and we subscribe to it as well, is just note the reality that it's the monarchies that are tending to adjust fairly well. They're staying above the fray. They're throwing ministers in front of the bus. But it's the republics, real or fake, that are experiencing most of the instability. And it is ironic that the United States, you know, classic democracy, is largely supporting the monarchies. And we think it's a mistake, a tactical mistake, that the Obama administration isn't pressing these monarchies harder for more reforms. Obviously, the key in the Gulf is Saudi Arabia. You have an aging reformist king there in Abdullah, rather an inward turn as of late. With the unrest in Bahrain, obviously some mustering of support in the direction of the monarchy there. Rumors that the Saudis have sent tanks are definitely providing advice. This is crucial for the United States because the U.S. Fifth Fleet, 30 ships, about 6,000 personnel located there. If you don't have the Fifth Fleet operating in the Persian Gulf, then you have a very different situation in terms of U.S. influence. But we would point out, more than the likelihood of these kinds of events tripping over into real revolution in the monarchies, we spend most of our time watching Yemen. We think that's the place where you have the biggest possibility of a civil war renewed. The president there looking fairly shaky. And if we're looking at wild cards, the two we like to cite, Israel is feeling incredibly isolated by a lot of these events. They got those 50,000 Iranian-supplied rockets possessed by Hezbollah across the Lebanese border. Hamas is definitely becoming more active as a result of the cork sort of being pulled in terms of Egyptian suppression there, in terms of goods and material moving into that sector. So we look at Israel very possibly moving to, quote unquote, as they like to say, mow the grass in one of those two situations, strike preemptively. The other interesting thing we note, reports are Iran has redoubled its efforts on enrichment, and yet there are strong indications that the leadership there is highly split over the question of proceeding ahead with the whole nuclear option. There may be some leverage or opportunity or leeway, some freedom of action there, as Iran becomes more nervous over these spreading revolutions and starts to switch from cheering them on to worrying about what can happen in its own country. There may be some leeway there to bargain on the nuclear issue. So a lot of things to track, obviously a very fluid situation, but a fascinating twist of events considering where we were just 6 months ago.